Hello, good evening, welcome, Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Evening, Om Shanti.
I hope everyone is doing well.
Thank you, Swami.
Nice to see you, Tom, after a long time. Welcome, John, a few other friends, welcome.
Thank you.
So today we ought to explore the topic of ego. I think we all know what ego is, right? And we all know how it works, right? And the thought was to try and understand from a practical standpoint what are some of the ways in which we can recognize that I am being driven by ego or not. Right? So it's either the ego driving us, or it's the real self driving us. And last Sunday we were exploring the subject of humility. And so the opposite of humility really is ego. So how do I understand the difference between humility and ego, and how to shift the consciousness from ego to humility? So the thought was today to kind of dive a little deeper into various aspects around ego and humility. Yeah. Okay, so let's begin. So we call it Mr. Ego. As if, ego, if we were to personify ego, how would we do that? And because once we kind of make it very clear that this is how ego looks like, we personify it, then it is easier for us to identify that, when it is that I'm being driven by ego. Like last Thursday, I think it was kind of for exploring ego as the narrator, right? The narrator that always kind of, says something in the background, creates stories and all, right? And today we will explore different aspects of ego that we can identify, and then once we identify, it's easier for us to let go. If we look at all the vices, ego is the subtlest of all. We say algae, right? The anger, lust, attachment, greed, and ego. The algae, right? Anger, lust, attachment, greed, and ego. And ego is the subtlest of all. And that's why we say it's other vices are easier to understand. Okay, if I'm getting angry, I know I'm getting angry, right? But then as we move towards like these two, attachment and ego, even attachment will say, okay, now I know I have attachment to this person, this thing, whatever. But ego is very subtle. It can, like in today's blessing also, right? We heard that we may have a spiritual ego. Yeah. Now I'm, a yogi. Now I'm making good effort, like that. So how to recognize, right? And what I've realized over the years is the moment I recognize ego, this is ego, at that moment, ego will lose its power over the soul. So let's go, and then maybe we can, let's explore more. So we have a few pointers of how to understand how ego works. So first says the ego is serious about everything. everything is important and everything has to be accurate and on time. The ego excels in serious situations, summons up more power and becomes more controlling. And we can all relate to it, right? Sometimes we become like that. No, it has to be accurate. It has to be this way. It has to be on time. And so ego is extremely serious about things, right? And ego excels in serious situations, summons up more power and becomes more controlling. So that's how we can feed ego, right? Second says the word fun is not in the dictionary of the ego. The ego is too arrogant to be light-hearted and playful. One thing that ego is too scared to get close to is possible ridicule, embarrassment, or shame. So ego will always then create, kind of, it'll always make the soul guarded. Like I shouldn't be, made fun of, or I shouldn't be ridiculed, or things like that. I mean, of course, we can all relate to it. We have, in certain, form or to a certain degree, we all have these, qualities. But then it's important to identify it's coming from ego, right? Another is the ego loves to be right all the time. Not only that, it wants to prove others wrong, whilst it proves itself right. I should be right. Others can be wrong, or I need to prove that I am right. If I'm doing any task or anything, my intention would be to always prove that I am right. So ego will not care about how others are feeling, but will care about I am right. What I said was right. It won't care for the eventual outcome. It will care about the self. Ego will not discuss and not reason. The ego does not allow itself to see that others can also have right ideas and may be right also. Right? So it's not discussion. It's just saying, okay, this is the way it should be. It's important to realize, like sometimes in a subtle way, we may function like that. That, okay, with someone, okay, I don't want to discuss, I don't want to reason. This is the way it has to be. That's all ego. It's either the E way or the highway. Because the ego is insecure, it cannot allow others to come close. So ego breeds on insecurity. So all these are signs of ego, like the personality of Mr. Ego. That's how we can understand Mr. Ego. In our day-to-day situations, ego loves to be in its comfort zone, safe and secure. If there is any hardship, the ego loses its patience, peace and happiness, thus missing out on life experiences and their lessons, and ultimately the enjoyment of life. Ego wants to be in its comfort zone, doesn't want to venture out. And so then in the process, it won't be able to learn something new from life's experiences. It won't, enjoy life that much. When it has to adjust the slightest, the ego feels pity for itself, feeling that life is conspiring against it, because the ego always feels alone and separate. Sometimes I'm a victim, like life is conspiring against me. Everyone is there to hurt me. Right? So whenever I have that feeling, it just means that it's coming from ego. It's not true. It's important to realize that it's not about, because we all can identify with some of it, right? Even I can identify with some of it. But the moment these feelings come, it just means that they're coming from ego. They're not coming from the true self. Right? Mhm. Then the ego is selfish. It does not care for people or things. It only cares for itself. It is stuck at I with a small I and doesn't even consider the we. The ego will race to get its own needs met first before considering others. The ego will be the first to jump in, step in, dive in. It wants to be first and foremost. It fears losing out. Mhm. So I rather than we. So ego will always be focused on glorifying the self rather than the collective. Mhm. It wants to be the first. Right? Mhm. Yeah. Ego loves predictability. If something is out of line, ego screams and shouts. It can't handle it. It can only handle the known and not the unknown. Ego does all in its power to keep things and people in their places, so there can be no surprises. Flexibility is not an option. Need more signs? Ego loves to talk. It can't handle silence and has to fill the void by stepping in and saying something. Ego loves to be heard, yet finds it hard to listen. Even though they may be inverted ego personality types who shrink at the prospect of being put in the limelight for fear of close inspection, the two are talking loudly with the silence of their actions. Because the ego, for all its bravado, is not confident. It's trying to project an image that it's very brave, but it's actually not confident. The ego loves to complicate. It loves to expand. Nothing is simple for the ego. Everything turns into a drama or a story, which has to be told over and again. It loses energy, yet it will not stop because it believes that it derives kudos from being the storyteller. Sometimes a simple thing, we can actually complicate it. And we create a story and we want to then, live and relive and also share it, right? So ego will always complicate things. Ego is scared. It fears defeat and complexity. The opposite of fear is love. And the ego finds it hard to love and engage. Love embraces and ego keeps everyone at a distance. Mm. Let's pause for a moment and just reflect. We have gone through a lot of information here about how to describe the personality of ego. Right? So what are some of the keywords that come up in this, in ego? How do we define ego? The personality of ego? What are some of the keywords? Yes?
Om Shanti.
Yeah.
Ego loves to talk.
Loves to talk.
That's for one. They hear, not listen to the things.
Right.
They does not like silence.
Yeah,
They want
ego
to
does not like silence.
put their noises in their mind
Mm.
and force it on to the others.
Force it on to others. Right.
Love, comfort zone, and what
Loves to be in the comfort zone. Right.
and whenever any hardship happens, loses the patience,
Mm.
peace, and happiness.
It loses
that.
patience, peace, happiness.
Instead of enjoying the journey and learning and get out of it in a more powerful state of mind,
Mm.
misses out the life experience and get drained into the drama of life.
Misses out the experience of life and gets drained into the drama of it. Good. Right. Thank you. Yeah.
The key word I would say, love to bully around everyone.
Bullying. Used to bully everyone. Right.
Let's say ego, E-way or highway.
E-way or highway. Right.
Always insecure.
Mm. Always insecure.
Mm. Love to be in his own comfort zone.
Comfort zone. Yeah.
Have no
Right.
flexibility.
No flexibility.
No options.
No options. Right.
Love to talk but can't listen.
Love to talk but can't listen. True.
Have no confidence.
No confidence. It tries to project, I'm confident, but it's actually not. Mm.
Nothing is simple for it. And
Nothing
very scared.
Mm. Scared.
Fear of defeat.
Fear of defeat. Yes. Yeah. Likes to complicate. Mm. And to a certain extent, yes.
Has a superiority and inferiority complex.
Yeah. Superiority complex or inferiority complex. True. What else?
Pushes others to be ahead.
Yeah.
They want to always be ahead first.
Always wants to be first ahead, right? I should be the first. Right. Good. Yeah.
And Mr. Ego will always think is right and prove others wrong.
Wants to prove himself right and wants to prove others wrong. Right. So he's not looking at the whole situation, but actually it's trying to prove himself right. His success is, oh, I am right. His success is not that everything is good, but that's how the ego works, right?
That is my, E-way or the highway. My way or the highway.
Yeah. Right. It's important to, through all this, whatever we have discussed, it gives us an indicator of, it's like a self-checking. Where is my mind, being driven by ego? And why is it bad to have ego? What's the problem with ego? Okay, suppose I'm driven by ego, then what? What happens? What is the problem of having you? What happens if I have
When you
ego?
have ego, no one can put any sense to his head.
Right.
You're not humble.
Not humble. Right.
Not flexible, not, ready to listen to others.
Mm. To really maybe make it very clear, ego is like cancer. Ego is cancer, simply put, because the energy of ego is a destructive energy. You know why? So let me share this another slide over here of how the energy of ego is a destructive energy. How do we understand that, right? Those who are physicians will probably understand this better, and think you're doing some research on cancer cells, right? So the difference between normal and cancer cells. What is the difference? First is in terms of growth. Cancer cells continue to grow after enough cells are present. This overgrowth forms a cluster of cells, causing the formation of a tumor. Normal cells stop growing when enough cells are present. So if I'm only focused on myself, I am right, I need to grow, right? It means that I am harming the system, right? It's like I'm not. So normal cell works for the body to make sure the body is functioning well. But a cancer cell is not working for the body. It works for itself, right? A normal cell will like to make sure that the entire body is functioning well. So when it's needed to grow, it will grow. When it's needed to stop, it will stop. When it needs to die, it will also die, right? It will rejuvenate because it is working for the body. Its goal is I'm working for the body, for the system. But a cancer cell is not working for the body. A cancer cell, it's working for itself because it wants to grow, irrespective of whatever state the body is in. Right? And in the process, what happens eventually, because the cancer cells grow so much, right, that they completely, the balance of the body is lost. The body dies, and then the cancer cell also dies, right? So it's actually working towards its own destruction without knowing it, right? Because eventually it is going to die. So it's a destructive energy. So although it feels I'm growing, but actually I'm preparing for my own destruction. If I'm not, right, working for the body, working for the larger good, isn't it? So ego really is a destructive energy. Because I'm just focused on the self. I don't care about anything else. If we see all the wars or whatever, why ego, right? But in the process, we know that it's harming everyone, right? Second is communication. Cancer cells do not respond to the signals from other cells warning overgrowth. Normal cells, in turn, respond to these signals and stop growing. So there's a message coming, to the cancer cell, stop growing, stop growing. Cancer cell said, no, I want to grow. Doesn't listen. Like, doesn't listen. Just wants to talk, right? Doesn't listen. Normal cells respond to these signals and stop growing. Right? Cell repair. Cancer cells don't repair themselves when they are old or damaged. Normal cells do repair themselves or may even die off if they are not healthy. And that's why if we really see, even in our life, like whenever we have acted on ego, based on ego, it will always eventually lead to one or the other form of destruction. Either it will destroy the relationship, either it will destroy the trust, either it will destroy my own, self-respect, right? It will cause one or the other form of destruction. And when the soul energy works, that's why it is a constructive energy. That's why in the Murli we heard Nirman and Nirman. Nirman is constructive, right? Constructive energy is the energy of humility. And destructive energy is the energy of ego. So I may feel I'm growing, but actually I'm preparing myself for my own destruction if it is stemming out of ego. And that's why, the Murli Baba said, no, you have to make sure that expansion is grounded in humility and not in ego. Because if it is rooted in ego, it is doomed to be destroyed. Right? I'm not building anything. Right? It's very interesting, right? To look at it like this, right? And that's why I really love the way, it came in Sunday's class. Nirmanta, Nirmanta. And constructive and humility. And that's true, right? And so sometimes you feel being humble, maybe like being weak, but actually it's not. It's the other way. If we are humble, only then we will grow, build.
Shanti,
Yes.
just to add, how actually cancer happen in real life? So everybody of us has tumors in our body. It's not that we don't have tumors. However, when the tumor cells piles up from more than one level, then it causes cancer. And if we go deep, like how this happens, there have been maybe hundred thousands of scientists have tried their research and stuff. So still the valid reason is not known. It can happen by various causes. In real life, it can also happen through ego. If you have a lot of stress in mind and your environment is not conducive, that also can be caused. So the many other things. I was just correlating it with what we are studying right now. I think ego in the personal life is like cancerous.
Yeah, right. Good. Nice. Thanks. Thank you. And that's why it says, we say one is soul power and the other is ego power, or the outer power. So the soul or the inner power creates, and the ego or outer power destroys. Right? One is a creative energy, other is a destructive energy. Right? And let's segue and look a little bit on humility, because when we are looking at humility, it says, is a very nice quote to differentiate between ego and humility. It says, pride or ego is concerned with who is right. Humility is concerned with what is right. Subtle difference, right? But pride is concerned with who is right. So any situation, anything, who is right? Am I right? Right? Or is the other person right? But humility is concerned with what is right. Again, it's working for the entire system, not just itself. And it's quite interesting. This is Einstein's quote. It says, ego is 1 divided by knowledge. More the knowledge, lesser the ego. Lesser the knowledge, more the ego. So the more I have knowledge of the self, knowledge of, it's like the true knowledge, right? Of who I am, where I have come from, like true knowledge. So knowledge actually is the antidote of ego. So if I'm feeling thoughts of ego in the mind, it just means that I have to somewhere increase my clarity of knowledge, reflection of knowledge. Because true knowledge reduces ego. Lack of knowledge increases ego. And so there's another nice quote about humility, and it says, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. So it doesn't mean that I'm saying I'm, nobody. No, it's about thinking of yourself less. So I'm not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about everyone. Or I'm thinking about, the entire world. Right? And that's where soul consciousness comes in, right? So the more my thoughts are just rooted in the drama, in the story, one or the other way, I'm just focused on the self. But the more I, take a back seat, I switch my consciousness to the soul, then I'm actually connected to the entire creation, right? And we'll share 2 examples of humility from nature that really tell us how we can learn from nature, how to be humble.
जैसे पेड़ जितना भर जाता है फ्रूट से उतना झुक जाता है.
Yes, true. Good. Yes, right. The more fruits a tree has, the more actually it bows down. Right? So first example we'll learn from is water. So there's a little clip just show that, uh, try and learn something from it.
Today I'd like to share with you 3 lessons I learned so far from the philosophy of water. 3 lessons that I believe have helped me find greater fulfillment in almost everything that I do. The first lesson is about humility. If we think about water flowing in a river, it is always staying low. It helps all the plants grow and keeps all the animals alive. It doesn't actually draw any attention to itself, nor does it need any reward or recognition. It is humble. But without water's humble contribution, life as we know it may not exist. Instead of doing things so I can get ahead, it is so much more fulfilling and meaningful to help other people overcome their challenges so they can succeed. With a humble mindset, I was able to form a lot richer connections with the people around me. I became genuinely interested in the stories and experiences that make them unique and magical. The second lesson I learned is about harmony. If we think about water flowing towards a rock, it would just flow around it. When faced with an obstacle, somehow water finds a solution without force, without conflict. When I was thinking through this, I began to understand why I was feeling stressed out in the first place. Instead of working in harmony with my environment, I was working against it. I was forcing things to change because I was consumed by the need to succeed or to prove myself. By simply shifting my focus to trying to achieve more success, to trying to achieve more harmony, I was immediately able to feel calm and focused again. The third lesson I learned from the philosophy of water, it's about openness. Water is open to change. Depending on the temperature, it can be a liquid, solid, or gas. Depending on the medium it's in, it can be a teapot, a cup, or a flower vase. In fact, it's water's ability to adapt and change and remain flexible that made it so enduring through the ages, despite all the changes in the environment. We also live in a world today of constant change. Now, we can stay behind closed doors and continue to be paralyzed by our self-limiting belief, or we can just open up and enjoy the ride. It can only be an amazing experience. So humility, harmony, and openness. Those are the 3 lessons I learned from the philosophy of water so far. So nowadays, whenever I feel stressed, unfulfilled, anxious, or just not sure what to do, I simply ask the question, what would water do?
It's a nice TED talk. Yeah, I think I really like the way he said, if I'm not sure what to do, I'll ask myself, what would water do? Right. And that's so true, right? Humility, harmony, and openness is what we can learn from water. Right. The humility, it doesn't want to be seen or recognized. It's actually working for the entire, creation. And harmony is like, doesn't want to resist, just finds a way. So flexible and open to change. No matter whatever situation is, it'll change itself. Solid, liquid, gas, it can change itself. It can change its form. So in whatever form, right? It's kept and it'll take the form of that container. And so in really then soul consciousness, this capacity of the soul to be, to be humble, to be in harmony, to be open, it increases. And suddenly is so much more meaningful. and so much more beautiful, purposeful, and soulful. And the second example is, it's called a Chinese bamboo. Chinese bamboo. What Chinese bamboo? So,
I'm not sure.
huh?
We have heard about it. I'm
Mm.
not sure.
Mhm. So it's this one. Just show this. It says, be like the bamboo. The higher you grow, the deeper you bow. The higher you grow, the deeper you bow.
Didn't understand, Sarabhai, what that means. The higher you grow, the deeper you bow.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Somehow the internet got disconnected. Is this audible? I've tried to connect through my phone. Is this audible to everyone?
Yes,
Yeah.
Sarabhai.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll watch another video in a bit. But if we don't watch it, the essence of that is like you know how a bamboo tree grows, right? A bamboo tree for a very long time, nothing comes out of it. Like we feel that maybe it is, we don't know whether it is growing or not growing, but then eventually it is actually using the time to build its roots, right? And then when it grows in a very short time, it grows like very, very high, right? And so what it was doing in all those, months or, seasons is it was actually growing beneath the ground, underground. It was growing its roots, right? And then the actual growth which was seen was actually later on. And so the deeper you grow means, so actually, there are two growths. One is growth inside and the other is, upwards. So growth inside is humility and growth upwards is, the expansion externally. So the more we, are incognito, like a bamboo tree, but we are still growing internally. We may not be able to see something externally yet, but actually we are growing internally because we are building those connection of the roots. Does it kind of make sense? And later on, when we actually see the result of it, then the bamboo tree actually bows down because it's so high, it bows down. So it reflects its humility in that way. Right. And so, humility is something that we can really. Another quote it says is, "A mistake that makes you humble is better than an achievement that makes you arrogant." A mistake that makes you humble is better than an achievement that makes you arrogant. And so generally we say, we make many mistakes, but actually it's good because it's, allows us to stay grounded and not feel that, that ego or arrogance. And so that's why sometimes even mistakes are actually, are very good, good to have mistakes. Sometimes if we don't make mistakes, we just feel, we can actually, do anything, everything. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Mm-hmm. I may need to maybe restart the system. Somehow it's not connecting to the internet. But is the voice coming clear on phone still? It's okay too.
Ji.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, those were a few thoughts about Mr. Ego and how we can, identify it, its personality, and then, how to really tune into the energy of humility and what we can learn, from different aspects of nature, how to be humble.
मुरली के आधार से देखे तो सौरभ भाई देवान ईगो ह्यूमिलिटी आत्मिक स्थिति और दूसरा हद में है और वो बेहद में है.
Right. One is limited, one is unlimited. Right. True. Good. Right. Any other thoughts? Anyone else would like to add, share on today's topic?
Ego is selfish, humility is selfless.
Right. Ego is selfish, humility is selfless. Good. Yes.
So when we were discussing the 11 points how to recognize ego, it almost felt like maybe out of 11, 60% of the points are valid for us. So for me personally, maybe sometimes in some scenario. So, is that? Yeah.
You're so sweet.
Maybe the drama, some in drama, what I was maybe correlating.
You're being humble to say that.
Only the humble people can say that.
They can say that. They can accept it. Yeah, true.
That's where I open up that I want to hear from our beautiful audience here that see, sometimes we feel that okay, something is wrong maybe and we are part of this ego, but it's good to know. It's good to know. I didn't know. So thank you again for the beautiful session, and thank you everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is ego always destructive? Would ego sometimes help some people to propel, to do something better in life? Like, let's say, if someone is lazy or whatever that is, an ego could potentially propel them to move forward. So I'm just kind of think, is it always it's negative, it's destructive, or it can also be positive depending on the context?
Yeah, I think probably it depends on the kind of the way we define ego versus, sometimes we call it self-respect also, you know. So there's a little line between the two, you know. So one is, let's say the pride that we take in, the real self, the true self, and that will actually, help the soul move forward. Meaning that, if, for example, I'm lazy, and, I'm always, complaining that, I don't have enough time, or, I don't have enough energy. But then when I, have that, kind of self-talk and realize that, my true self is not that, and, so it's like a positive self-talk in that way. So that is coming from the energy of the soul. I think that's always helpful. But then if I, tweak it to say, if it is coming from the aspect of, okay, I have to do something so that I look good, in the eyes of others, so that others, recognize me, for example. And that's what driving me, rather than my inner, kind of happiness or inner motivation, or my interest in doing something. And I feel, obviously in the long run, if I'm doing something to actually help build an image, right, it actually is not constructive. I mean, I may achieve temporary success, but eventually it's actually harming me, right? So even the work that I'm doing, if I'm doing to just please my customer or boss, and if I don't have real interest in actually making sure it is done correctly, or it is done rigorously, or I have not invested my real, time, energy into it, but I've just found out a shortcut or something, right? Just to, right. But eventually in the long run, it may not, that's what I think. It may not help, right? Right. I may even, do something which may not be that obvious, like, roots, right? Growing roots. It's like I'm learning something, but eventually it'll help me. Yes.
पर कभी कभी मुरली में बाबा कहते हैं ना, शुद्ध अहंकार.
Yeah, right.
Will that will be मतलब positive उसमें,
right.
जब हम
pure
so,
pride. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. One is I take pride in, being a child of God. I take my self-respect in, it's like it's coming from the soul energy. My self-respect, my pride is coming from, my truth. It's like my self-belief, right? Mhm. Mm. It's like, once we were having this nice discussion, is like, what is my driving force? Like, does being humble mean that I'm no longer ambitious in life? So what is driving me? So it's not the ambition to show or prove myself, but it's actually the ambition is then to serve to whatever skill set God is, using, the soul with. It's actually to use it to serve the world, rather than, being ambitious about it. There's a subtle difference. So you still be doing things, but the driving force is actually the larger good. It's like the attitude to serve, rather than the attitude to be seen, right, or to glorify it. I don't know. Those were some of the thoughts. Nishchi, if feel free to add. These were just a few thoughts, and feel free to add to it, or anyone else.
I could
Lazy.
Yes, John.
I could make the case that if someone's in a state of pain, you could look at the ego as a starter on your car. It's only used for a short period of time, ideally, because the car doesn't run very well if you're always having the starter on it, causes trouble. But it can start the car, and then if you switch gears after the car is moving, people who are in pain or they have no self-esteem, they might need the ego to get moving and then switch gears as they're moving to serve. But if they can't see themselves serving anything, then they won't move to be able to serve. So the ego could provide momentum to get them to serve.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think that's a very nice point. Yeah, it can provide some initial momentum, but then eventually the gear has to be shifted. Right? That's really nice. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Nice. Good. Nice. Other thoughts? You were saying something, Sanjay?
These are all valid points. More loving by hearing to everyone now. But yes, love Nishban topic and easy. So I was trying to think, okay, what's going with me and how I can learn from this. So because I'm lazy, I'm very competitive. So maybe is that the one which is driving me? However, your point was very well taken, that to please other, that's ego may work for a shorter term, but not for a longer term. So that's a very one of the amazing points I will take away. So thank you everyone. I don't want to talk. I think there is so many beautiful people.
Great. Any other inspirations before we conclude tonight? Okay, so great. Thank you so much for your time and presence. Let's maybe take a moment in silence to connect back to the soul that we are. As beautiful beings of light, completely separate from the roles that we play. And the soul is naturally loving, caring, kind, compassionate. It naturally cares for everyone, and it's humble, just like the Father of the soul is humble, God. And so the purpose of the soul is to really serve, to share, care. And that's what comes naturally to us as well. And so we let go of the temporary images of ego to come back to the truth of who we are and why we are here. Om Shanti. Shanti, thank you everyone. Have a nice rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Baba.
Om
Thank you.
Shanti. Thank you, brother.
Saurabh.
Thank you.
Thank you, family. Om Shanti.
Thank you,
Good night.
Saurabh. Bye. Thank you, family. Om Shanti.
Shanti.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Saurabh.
Shanti.
Thank you, family. Om Shanti.